Hey guys, welcome to another video. This is Dinos Sim. We're going to be exploring the Center map. This is our new Ark Survival Ascended Center playthrough. If you haven't seen already, we have the 5-video mini-series to introduce you to Ark if you've never played it at all, and we'll be continuing with the island all the way through to Ascension. The center's going to be a little bit different. I want to mix things up a bit here. This is going to be an opportunity to look at different mechanics within the game. We're going to get set up, showing you just an introduction to where I'm at, about 23 days into playing on the center map, and showing you the sorts of things that I like to do as part of my setup. Let's get straight into it. So, let me show you around. As I said, we are, I think, 23 days in, and just very quickly going to be taking you through some of the immediate setup. We've just got something attacking. So here we go. So, just to explain how I begin on Ark games. So, whatever map that it is, the priority for me is setting up, getting a base, and getting a few priorities. Again, if you've not seen it, do check out the 5-video mini-series First Steps, which takes us through lots of the early game mechanics, particularly for those that have never played Ark before. This series is focused on the centre, so I'm going to be going a little bit quicker through this now and just giving you some highlights. So this is my beach base, and this was the first base that I created, and you know, just played around with some ideas. I did have a fireplace here. I actually moved that over to my second base, which I'll be showing you in a little bit. So what are the first things I like to do when I get set up? I like to think about first dinos. I did start with a parasaur, but I don't think I've got parasaur anymore to show you. For beginner dinos, I quite like raptors. Again, it depends a little bit on the map. These spawn quite close to the area I'm in, so I started to explore some of the raptors. And triceratops, they tend to be my first tame, especially for collecting berries in the very early game. Parasaurs are okay, but they're not particularly tanky, and I like having something that can defend against potential attacks. You can see here I've already been working up to my first set of flyers, and I've actually got my Trinodons and my Argentavises, so a bit more about those shortly. You can see I've started to do a little bit of exploration with breeding, and I've managed to get my base male and base female line set up at around level 224 for the Trinodons. I will go into a lot more detail about breeding. As a general point, when we get started, I would say try and get the highest level that you can. But again, sometimes at the beginning you just want 1 or 2 dinos to help with moving things around, picking up certain items that you need. So that can also be a good priority as well. What I did after I'd initially started with those elements, I worked on getting slightly better values, and I've been doing the same with the raptors. So my raptor is currently at level 224, and I'm continuing to explore some options for my levels for the raptor. To be honest, I don't tend to take raptors beyond the early game, so I don't know how much I'm going to be using those across this series. It'll be interesting to see. So I've got a whole host of different flyers here, and some of them are at slightly different levels. Again, something I'd encourage you to think about. Try and get your dinos as early as possible. Even if it's a mid-level dino, that's perfectly fine, because of course they're going to level up as you continue playing. And this is one of many. I've already set up several now. As I say, I've got a main breeding line at the top. One thing I would encourage you to think about, you will want to start considering whether you've got 2 really good levels, so try and go for as high a level as possible. Oh, in fact, we've had a couple of extra lines breeding here. Let me just have a quick check on these. Not claimed this one. This one is a female. It's got, I think, the same stats as the others, and it's not mutated, so that's fine. We're going to keep that one. And here, let's see what we've got there. Again, another female. This is again around the same line, and we've not got any mutations there. So, not much else to show you about the starter base. One thing I did as well was I took some of my raptor lines and started exploring a couple of options for like a little death squad. I quite like having this if you've got dinos you're wanting to clear on a map. So I managed to get a Carno as well. You can see I've got him in the middle here, and again I wasn't particularly worried about his level. He's just joined as an extra part there, so I've got like a 4 raptor squad led by my main raptor here. So I use them for any immediate little hunting, like a little hunting party, and that's really good if you've just got small dinos and things you want to work on. Something else I started exploring was different colour variations. I haven't thought about breeding them, but I've got some of those and I've labelled them already, so that later if I decide I want to bring that into my breeding lines I can. So that largely gives you the setup for my first base. The main priority for first base is I'm wanting to get a bit organised with basic elements in the game. So I had a little bit of storage. I've managed to move much out of this one, so you don't see much there. I wanted a spawn point. I set up just a sort of nice base. Didn't want to go into loads of details here. Already started to collect some collectible items. I tend to store those together, so we've got some in here. I've been doing a little bit with my narcotics and early use of the mortar and pestle. I've already done a fair bit of food collection and starting to collect some of those other elements, including eggs and more materials that you might need. One big point I would make is just keep collecting things. You can see I've got some early armor and early tech items, and I'm just largely leaving this at this base. So that's kind of it. It was just a small little introduction to this part. I've got loads of these Pteranodons. At some point I'll probably do a cull and get rid of some of these. I've got far too many than I need. But with that explored, I'll show you where I am on the map, and I'm going to take you to my second base. So here we are. I've travelled over to another part of the island, just a little bit higher from where I started on my first base. And just to put into context, I did create a raft and started exploring some raft designs. Plenty of YouTubers and other creative people that have designed amazing ways to create small boats, and so I've taken that design and played around with it, and I created this boat, and then I travelled over to this area with a Triceratops and with my main Argentavis, and then I've been flying around the map to get a second one, and I'm largely at the point where I'm breeding my Argentavis line as well. So I've got some things set up here that I'd love to show you. I think what I'm going to do, as it's night time, is I'm going to just land here, we're going to move over to daytime, and then I'm going to give you a further look at the base. So in actual fact, rather than waiting to show you the base, I thought what would be quite nice is I'm going to turn on some lighting and show you what I've managed to set up at the base already, so you can see it at night time. So for me, this is the first proper base. Now you can decide what materials you want to use, where exactly you want to set up. Wood is a good beginner material. It's stronger than thatch, so wherever you're going to build, wood is a good starting material. And you can see I've made not a huge base, but a reasonably sized base. Try to think a little bit about the design. What I've also done, and I'll show you this a little bit more when the light improves, is I have created a dock, and here is my boat, and I'll show you that in a bit more detail shortly. A couple of other things to show you then, just with the inner part of the base. I've started to create a little bit of a nice living room space. I'm going to do a bit more work here. Storage is definitely a big thing, so you want to start thinking about how you're going to do that, and I've already got several storage set up. I might have mentioned this in one of the previous videos. I really like these taxidermy stands, so I've just taken 2 Triceratops dermis and set them up with 2 different positions, so you have like a variety of positions for each that you can select through. And a couple of other things that I've done, this is just really for decorative. I've got a couple more pestle and mortars, starting to bring together the main ingredients that I need for most of my base builds. Already starting to collect some more materials and start to expand beyond what's in my smithy. Got a second smithy here. I've been collecting cementing paste by doing some harvesting across the map. Got a fair bit of metal smelting and been doing that. One thing I would encourage you to do anytime you're travelling in between bases, especially if you're starting to create different bases around the map, start to think about materials that you can pick up, drop off and be creating in between your travel to bases. So one main thing to think about there certainly is metal, and we're going to need a ton of that. So rather than trying to show you outside for the moment, I'm going to leave it there, and when it's daytime I'll show you the outside as well, and then we'll be on to the third base which I'm setting up. And just turned on the outside lighting as well. Again, experiment with this. I quite like these torches, especially for the wood look. I think that looks really cool. I've also got another little campfire over here, so again, if I have some wood, get that started. One thing I forgot to mention as well is I have my sleeping quarters there, based on the top there as well, and then from the outside I also have access to the roof. And here we go, so I've got some more of my backup flyers, a couple of the colour variants that I might breed in later on perhaps. Plenty of storage for my early flyers in the game. For me, Pteranodons is definitely a line that you want to work on, and also the Argentavis, and to start in a base I think both of those work really well. And here we are exploring the base in the daytime, so if I just have a little bit of a fly around, give you a bit more of an idea of the base. So I'm not gone too crazy for a first base, but I would call this a first proper base. So I've got my raft. This is a really cool design. You're just using the basic raft and then creating a boat around it, and then what I've created is like a sort of mini dock where I can put my boat, and you could also put some potential water tames. Just going to show you around the front of the base as well. And where I am on the map, there's not actually any, if I go into the bigger map here so you can see, there's not actually any carnivores on here. So this is kind of like a little hidden place really. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with expanding the base, but it gives me loads of opportunities to do that. As I said before, I've got space at the top to put some of my other flyers if I need, and all this space around the base as well. So all I'd say is, if you're not someone who's particularly confident with building, just have a go. This is slightly different to other builds that I've done. I always just try and do slightly different things every time. Showed you previously, but you can see this a bit better now. This is where bedroom is. Got a little bookcase, still got a little bit more decorating to do, but that's largely the base. These windows, I've essentially created a window by just leaving that open using half walls and then using the railings, and that creates, I think, a really nice window to the side of the base, which allows me to fly in and out. And there you go. So I quite like this as a beginner base. I'm just going to show you around a couple of other things. So this is the boat. I've not used the boat loads yet. I have actually got my first water tame as well. So again, you could kit this out. You might put a simple bed in here, maybe even a smithy. Some people put that maybe out on the front of the boat, so there's plenty of space and ability to do things. I've slightly tweaked the design. I was having some issues with connecting to the raft and driving it, so I deleted a part at the bottom, created a little step up here, and again you could have tames, you could have other storage, so you may well see me using that at different times as I progress through this centre map. So I really like my little dock area. It's not particularly big. Again, the boat's in there, so it can just drive straight out. But what I've also got is a Megalodon. So I've got my first water tame. What's really nice about this is, again, there's not loads of water creatures around the base. If I submerge, I can show you a little bit of that. I've not done much exploring in the water, to be honest. Even that slightly terrifies me, so going around in the water seems particularly terrifying. Here you go, I'm going to a deeper part of the water here. Don't want to explore too much of that, so I'm going to come straight back. But that's pretty cool, and again gives me opportunities to interact in the water now, which I think is also really exciting. So I'm just going to go and return here. In fact, since I'm here, why don't I just go over to this water drop. Megalodons are a really nice, I would say, sort of beginner tame. Pretty easy to tame. You can just be using a crossbow. That's what I did. Crossbows can be used underwater, by the way. Normal bow and arrows can't. So that's something to just bear in mind. I'm going to see if I can get these things off here. There you go. In fact, there's another crossbow here. Mine is... oh, this is slightly better than mine. So I might swap those out. Now, this can sometimes happen. You might become over-encumbered. I'm just on the border of being over-encumbered there, but I'm okay. Otherwise, I might have had to drop something there. I'm just going to swim back and park up my Megalodon. If, for example, you didn't have the raft or the boat that you've created, you can see I've had to create pillars down. You could quite easily start to box this off as a small little area and maybe even have a gate, but you can see the Megalodon's quite big, so I didn't want to worry too much about that, and I just parked my Megalodon at the side, and that's a really nice way to use a first water tame. So let's see if I can get up here. I have a feeling I can't. Let's just go over here actually. In fact, what I'm going to do is just throw some of these things. This is definitely one of the more frustrating bits about the game, so you really have to watch your weight, because otherwise you're going to struggle to move around the map. So, you know what, I'm just going to get rid of a couple more things. I seem to be getting stuck. Let me just do that offline and I'll... okay, so I've dropped off those materials and just going to show you a little bit more around the base. A couple of things I've started to collect. I'm going to have to start thinking about storing these in different places and organising my base a little bit, but that's okay. Haven't got as far as building to my next upgrade, which will be a fabricator. I'm probably going to either expand into this area here, or I might end up building a second building, maybe something along here where I can do a kind of workshop and start exploring some more advanced tech. So for now, that's the base. I quite like that. Nice little setup, not too overwhelming, just gives you space to begin setup, and for me this feels like a nice starter base, so I'm going to be coming back to this one quite a lot. I don't use the beach base that much now, and I'll probably start moving some materials over from there and eventually reducing the things that I have at that base to a very minimum. What I like to try and do as I'm playing through the game is, certainly this will be the case on the island, as part of the ascension, start to think strategically about where you want to set up on the map. And so to finish the video today, I want to show you my third base, which is going to be a much more strategic base. This is going to be quite a bit further from where we are now, near the centre, near the floating island, and near the swamp and the frost or colder biomes. So I'm going to fly over to that and I'll join you in a minute. And I thought I'd just stop here and show you a little bit of the map as I'm travelling over to my third base. Again, this is a really nice opportunity to be looking out for weapon drops, so again you might want to stop, have a little bit of a swim around, try for these things, and yeah, I just love the centre map. I think it's really stunning and really enjoy flying around here. So I'll continue doing that offline and I will see you at my third base. And here we go, guys, this is the third base that I'm setting up. So not a lot going on here at the moment, just a little bit to show you. And you can see here we are positioned really nicely near the floating islands in the centre. I'm going to show you on the map where we are. And as ever, on the way over, I've been picking up some materials, so I've got a few things I can drop off. I've got my metal here. A little thing you can do if you're struggling with your weight cap, just throw these things and it gives you a little bit of distance. You can pass these over, so that's been smelting. I did an earlier metal drop, just like I said before, you want to keep these things burning as you're moving around. And if you have a look on the map here, this is where we are. Just zoom out for you. So there we are, just on the left here, and I'm going to show you my last little bit. You can see on the map here I've got a creature just near in the winter biomes. I've got a woolly mammoth. So just to show you some of my utility dinos, I think these are definitely some of the first dinos you want to think about getting as you set up a level, as you set up a base. I've got a Argentavis here that's on neutral, so it'll be protecting these if they ever get attacked by anything. Don't get too many things attacking on this part of this rock cliff, but we do have Titanoboas and some of the swamp creatures not too far away. So a couple of really important tames to discuss with you. We've got the Ankylosaurus, we have the Daedicurus, and we have the Baryonyx. Baryonyx is really good for swamp and caves. Definitely going to be an important tame if you're following the series on Island, but I think all of these pretty much have utility on any map that you're on. Ankylosaurus is really good for collecting metal, but also really good at collecting rock and flint, but if you're wanting rock more specifically, then the Daedicurus is far better for that. Just going to get rid of this little dude. And what I'm going to be doing here is creating my first proper, fully established base. This will take quite a bit longer. I need to get some materials, and that's why I wanted to get my utility dinos. You can see I'm already starting to stock on the main materials that I will be needing. Far quicker to be doing it this way and to be using utility dinos for that purpose, so that's what I will be exploring as part of this series in the centre map. And definitely exploring some of the other arcs. So something we're going to be doing once we're a little bit more set up is travelling over to some of the other maps to give you a bit of an idea of those. Definitely going over to Scorched Earth to try and tame our first wyvern. Wyverns don't spawn on this map, and similarly I also want to tame a griffin. So I'm going to be explaining the mechanics of transferring between maps and using the centre really as our sandbox for creating and exploring lots of ideas within the world of Ark. Creating lots of bases, talking about storage solutions, looking at the effective ways to maybe set up some breeding lines, looking at setting up maybe farms, materials for cooking, maybe setting up a greenhouse. So all of those really important milestones we'll be covering in a little bit more detail on the centre. Just the final bit I want to show you as part of this first video is a little bit further down in the map. I have also managed to tame a mammoth, and in the process I was able to also tame a female mammoth. I think often it's quite nice to do that, to have a pair that you might want to mate. These aren't by any means top levels. My female's only 50, but the male is a little bit higher here at level 155. Mammoths are fantastic for wood collection, so between either the mammoth or the beaver, that's going to be something that you definitely want to explore. At the moment I haven't got access to cryopods. Once I get that set up and the third base is more established, I'll be able to move the animals over much more readily. For now I'm going to be leaving them over here to harvest my wood and to be using the Argentavis to transport that back to that third base. So there we go. So sort of 3 bases at the moment. I would say you don't need to have 3 bases. If you're just getting started, maybe start in a beach biome, but you are going to have to explore some of these other areas for other materials, and then you will start to appreciate that actually maybe you need bases in other areas. So that's what we're going to be doing on the centre map. Hope that's been helpful. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to subscribe. Look forward to see you next time. In the meantime, don't forget, explore, analyse, simulate, and I'll catch you next time.